On my 60th birthday, my daughter said she had a surprise. "We're taking you somewhere beautiful, Mom. A picnic by the lake." She drove me 2 hours into the woods, stopped at a rotting shack and said, "This is your new home. Happy birthday. But let me start from the beginning. Let me tell you how a birthday surprise became the day I was buried alive, and the day I began clawing my way back to the surface." Hello, my dear listeners. Thank you for being here. If you enjoy stories like this, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. I always find it fascinating to read which cities and countries you're listening from, and if you've lived through something like this, so don't hesitate to write a comment. Now please get comfortable. Happy listening. My name is Kristen Lawson. I'm 60 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I knew what my life was. I was a widow, a mother, a retired English teacher who spent her days in quiet routine, morning tea, afternoon reading, evening phone calls with my daughter Claire. I lived in a small but comfortable house in Maplewood, the same house my husband Michael and I bought 32 years ago, the same house where we raised Claire, the same house where Michael died 5 years ago, his hand in mine, his last words a whisper. "Take care of yourself, Chris. Promise me." I promised. But I didn't keep it. After Michael died, I became invisible. Not dramatically. No sudden collapse, no theatrical grief. Just a slow fade, like a photograph left too long in sunlight. Claire visited more often after the funeral. At first I was grateful. She'd bring groceries, help with bills, sit with me on the porch. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone so much," she'd say, her voice honeyed with concern. "Why don't Ryan and I help you with things? You're getting older. It's too much for one person." Ryan, her husband. Handsome in that smooth corporate way, sharp suits, white teeth, firm handshakes. He worked in finance, made good money, always checking his watch, always taking calls in the other room. I liked him well enough. He was polite, distant, the kind of son-in-law who remembers your birthday but never asks how you're really doing. "I'm managing fine," I told Claire. "I don't need help," but she insisted. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, my life stopped being mine. First, it was the bills. "Mom, let me handle these. You're always worried about late fees. I'll set up autopay from your account." Then it was my pension. "Mom, just deposit it into our joint account. It's easier this way. We'll cover everything together." I hesitated. Something felt wrong. But Claire's eyes were so earnest, so full of daughterly love. "Mom, don't you trust me? I'm just trying to help." So I agreed. Then came the small indignities. The comments that felt like paper cuts, tiny, sharp, accumulating. "Mom, maybe you shouldn't drive anymore. You seem distracted." "Mom, did you take your pills today? You're forgetting things." "Mom, maybe we should think about options for when you can't live alone anymore." I wasn't forgetting things. I wasn't distracted. I was 60, not 90. But every time I protested, Claire would sigh with that patient, pitying expression. "It's normal, Mom. Aging is hard. We just want to take care of you." So I stayed quiet. Let them manage my money. Let them make decisions. Let myself become smaller and smaller until I was barely an outline of the woman I used to be. And then came my birthday. The morning of my 60th birthday started like any other. I woke at dawn, made tea, sat at the kitchen table watching the light change through the curtains. I wasn't expecting much. Claire had mentioned she and Ryan were busy with work. "We'll celebrate soon, Mom, I promise." So when my phone rang at 8 o'clock and Claire's name flashed on the screen, I was surprised. "Happy birthday, Mom." Her voice was bright, almost giddy. "Guess what? Ryan and I cleared our schedules. We're taking you somewhere special today." My heart did something it hadn't done in years. It lifted. "Really?" "Oh, Claire, you didn't have to." "Of course we did." "It's your 60th. That's a big one. We're taking you for a picnic by the lake. Just the 3 of us. Like old times, the lake. We used to go when she was little. Michael would pack sandwiches, and Claire would chase ducks along the shore, shrieking with laughter. "That sounds lovely," I said, and I meant it. For the first time in months, I felt seen, remembered, great. "We'll pick you up at 10. Wear something comfortable. It's going to be beautiful." I hung up, smiling. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I cared about how I looked. I put on my nicest dress, a soft blue cotton with small white flowers. I brushed my hair until it shone. I even found my old sun hat, the one Michael loved. At 9:45, I was standing on the porch, holding a small bouquet of daisies from my garden. For the picnic blanket, I thought, a little touch. At exactly 10 o'clock, Ryan's sleek gray sedan pulled into the driveway. Claire waved from the passenger seat, sunglasses perched on her head. "Hi, Mom. Ready for your big day?" "Ready." I climbed into the back seat, clutching my daisies. Ryan glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Nice flowers." "Thank you. I thought they'd be nice for the picnic." He didn't respond, just started the car. Claire turned on the radio, some top 40 station, too loud, too cheerful. She hummed along, scrolling through her phone. "So," I said, raising my voice over the music, "which lake are we going to? Harmon Lake? That's where we used to—" "It's a surprise, Mom," Claire said without looking up. "You'll love it. Trust me." I settled back, watching the familiar streets of Maplewood slide past the window. The grocery store where I shopped. The library where I used to take Claire for story time. The coffee shop where Michael proposed. We turned onto the highway, heading east, away from Harmon Lake. "Claire?" I leaned forward. "Isn't the lake west of town?" "Different lake, Mom. This one's better. More private." "Oh." I sat back. I didn't know there was another lake nearby. Ryan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Claire's thumbs moved rapidly across her phone screen, texting someone. The highway stretched ahead, long and empty. We passed the last of the suburban developments, the last gas station, the last evidence of civilization. Trees began to close in on both sides. Tall, dense, dark. I checked my phone. No signal. "How much farther?" I asked. "Not long," Ryan said. "Another 20 minutes." The road narrowed. Pavement turned to gravel, then to dirt. The car bounced over ruts and potholes. "This doesn't seem like the way to a lake," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "It's remote, Mom," Claire said. "That's the point. Peace and quiet. You're always saying you need peace and quiet." The trees grew thicker. No other cars, no houses. Just endless forest and a road that seemed to lead nowhere. My chest tightened. "Claire," my voice was sharper now. "Where are we going?" "I told you. It's a surprise." The car slowed, stopped. We were in a small clearing. Ahead of us stood a structure, if you could call it that. A shack, a ruin, rotting wood, sagging roof, broken windows covered with warped plywood. Weeds grew waist-high around it. The porch had collapsed on one side. The whole thing looked like it might fall over if you breathed on it wrong. I stared. "Is this—" I couldn't finish the sentence. Ryan turned off the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. Claire opened her door, stepped out, stretched. Finally. That drive took forever. Ryan popped the trunk. I sat frozen in the back seat, my daisies still clutched in my hand. This couldn't be the lake. There was no lake. There was nothing here but trees and rot and silence. Ryan walked to the back of the car. I heard him lift something heavy. Then he appeared at my window, holding a suitcase. My suitcase. The old floral one I kept in the hall closet. He set it on the ground in front of the shack. "What?" My voice came out as a whisper. "What are you doing with my suitcase?" Claire walked over to my door, opened it. "Come on, Mom, let's get you settled." "Settled?" I didn't move. "Claire, what is this? Where's the lake?" She sighed. That same patient, pitying sigh I'd heard so many times before. "Mom, there's no lake. This is your gift. Your new home." The words hung in the air like something physical. Heavy, sharp. I looked at her face, my daughter's face. The face I'd kissed goodnight for 18 years. The face I'd seen graduate high school, get married, become an adult. It was a stranger's face, cold, smooth, empty. "This is a joke," I said. "Right? This is some kind of joke." "It's not a joke, Mom." Ryan's voice was flat. "Come on, get out of the car." I didn't move. "Mom." Claire's voice hardened. "Get out. We need to go." "Go?" I repeated stupidly. "Go where?" "Home. Our home. Your home is here now." The world tilted. I gripped the edge of the seat. "I don't understand. Why would you— This place is—" "It's perfect for you," Claire said. Her words were clipped, efficient. "You've been forgetful, Mom, confused. You need quiet, space, somewhere you can't—" "Cause problems." "Cause problems?" My voice rose. "What problems?" "Claire, I've been giving you my pension for 3 years." I've done everything you asked, and we appreciate that. Ryan stepped forward. But you're becoming a burden, Kristen. The house, the bills, the constant worry. We can't do it anymore. This is better. For everyone. Better? I looked around wildly at the rotting shack, the collapsing porch, the wilderness pressing in from all sides. This is better? Fresh air, nature, peace and quiet. Claire's voice was a script, rehearsed and hollow. The owner's letting us rent it for almost nothing. You'll be fine here, I stared at her. You're leaving me here. In the middle of nowhere, with no car, no phone signal. No. You'll figure it out, Mom. You're resourceful. She glanced at her watch. We really need to go. Traffic's going to be awful. Claire, I grabbed her arm. Please, don't do this. Whatever I did wrong, I'm sorry. Just tell me what I did wrong. She pulled away. You didn't do anything wrong, Mom. You're just old. And we need to move on with our lives. Move on? The words were ash in my mouth. Ryan and I are trying for a baby. We need space. Your house is too small for all of us. My house, I repeated. Claire, I'm not living in your house. You're living in mine. Her expression didn't change. Not anymore. Ryan was already walking back to the car. Claire leaned down, kissed my cheek, quick, mechanical, like checking a box. Happy birthday, Mom. Take care of yourself. Then she turned, got in the car, closed the door. The engine started. I stood there, still holding my daisies, watching my daughter and her husband drive away. The car moved slowly at first, kicking up dust. Then faster. The red taillights blinked once, twice, and disappeared around a bend in the trees. The dust settled. The sound of the engine faded, and I was alone. I don't know how long I stood there. The daisies slipped from my hand, falling into the dirt. I watched them lie there, white petals against brown earth, and thought, absurdly, I should pick those up. But I didn't move. The silence was enormous. Not peaceful, not restful, just vast, like standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing there's nothing below, no birds, no wind. Just the faint creak of the shack settling behind me. I turned slowly, looking at the structure that was now apparently my home. The porch was only partially intact. 3 steps led up to it, but the second step had rotted through, leaving a gaping hole. The front door hung crooked on its hinges. I walked toward it, my legs moving automatically, like a puppet's. The door groaned when I pushed it. Inside, the air was thick, dust, mold, decay. Sunlight filtered through cracks in the boarded windows, casting thin lines of gold across a dirt floor. There was a potbelly stove in one corner, its surface orange with rust. A wooden table, its legs uneven. An overturned stool. And against the far wall, an iron bed frame. Just the frame, no mattress, its springs exposed like ribs. This was it. This was what they'd left me with. I walked to the table, ran my finger across its surface. It came away gray with dust. On the windowsill, incongruously, sat a small glass vase with a single flower inside. The flower was long dead, brittle, white, ghostly. But someone had placed it there once, maybe years ago, maybe decades. I touched its stem gently. It's just you and me, I whispered. And then finally something broke inside me. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet snap, like a thread pulled too tight. I sank to the floor, my back against the wall, and I waited for tears. They didn't come. Instead, there was only a strange, cold clarity, a stillness that spread through my chest like frost. The woman who had arrived here, the compliant mother, the dutiful widow, the woman who shrank herself to fit other people's needs, she was gone. What remained was something else, something harder, sharper. I sat on that dirty floor as the light faded outside, and I made a decision. I would not die here. I would not disappear quietly into this wilderness, a discarded thing no one remembered. I would survive. And then, when I was strong enough, I would make them regret every single choice that led them to this moment. Night fell fast in the woods. One moment, the shack was filled with dusky gray light. The next, it was black. I hadn't moved from my spot against the wall. My body ached, my back, my legs, my heart. But my mind was sharp, painfully, brilliantly sharp. I thought about Claire, about the careful way she'd orchestrated this, the packed suitcase, the fake picnic story, the remote location. This hadn't been impulsive. This had been planned. How long? Weeks? Months? I thought about Ryan. The way he'd avoided my eyes the entire drive. The way he'd set my suitcase down like he was delivering a package. And I thought about my house. The house Michael and I bought. The house where we built our life. Your house is too small for all of us, Claire had said, as if it were hers. As if I were the guest. A cold realization washed over me. They weren't just abandoning me. They were erasing me, pushing me out so they could take my place. My home, my life. I stood up slowly, my joints protesting. There was an old oil lamp on the table. I checked it. Empty. No matches anyway. In the corner, I found my suitcase. I unzipped it. Inside, a change of clothes. A threadbare robe. A bar of soap. A toothbrush. And at the very bottom, wrapped in a dish towel, my phone. My old flip phone. The one Claire had bought me years ago, calling it a grandma phone with a condescending laugh. I turned it on. The battery was at 80%, but the screen showed no signal, just a blank space where the bar should be. Of course, we were too deep in the woods. I walked to the door, stepped outside. The night was impossibly dark. No streetlights, no moon. Just stars, more stars than I'd seen in decades. I held the phone up, moving it in slow circles. Nothing. I walked farther from the shack, stumbling over roots and rocks. Still nothing. Then I saw it. A hill rising behind the shack, maybe 100 yards away. Higher ground. I started walking. The climb was steep, the ground uneven. Branches whipped my face. My dress caught on thorns, but I kept moving. At the top, I held up the phone again. One bar flickered into existence. Then two. My hands shook as I scrolled through the contacts. Most were old, outdated. But one name made me stop. Theodore Blackwell, attorney, Michael's lawyer. The one who'd helped us with the will when Michael got sick. I hadn't spoken to him in 5 years, but his number was still in my phone. I pressed call. It rang, once, twice, 5 times. Then a voice, groggy and irritated. Blackwell, Mr. Blackwell? My voice came out rough. This is Kristen Lawson, Michael Lawson's widow. A pause. Mrs. Lawson? It's nearly midnight. Is everything all right? No, I said. Nothing is all right. I need your help. What's happened? My daughter. She's taken my house. My money. She dumped me in the woods. And I need you to tell me something. Tell you what? The house. The one Michael and I bought. Whose name is on the deed? Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear him moving, probably pulling up files on his computer. Let me check the records, he said. Hold on, I waited. The wind picked up, cold against my skin. Mrs. Lawson, he said finally. According to the county records, the property at 428 Maple Drive is registered solely in your name. Not joint ownership, just you. Michael transferred his share to you completely about 8 years ago. My knees nearly gave out. Are you sure? Positive. I handled it myself. Michael was very specific. He wanted you protected. Protected. Michael had known. Somehow he'd known. Mr. Blackwell, I said, I need you to do something for me. First thing tomorrow morning. What do you need? I need you to freeze any access my daughter has to my accounts. I need you to file paperwork confirming my sole ownership of the house. And I need you to find out if she's done anything, loans, mortgages, anything, using my name. Mrs. Lawson, those are serious accusations. I know. And I think you're going to find proof. He was silent for a moment. Then, where are you right now? Somewhere in the woods. About 2 hours east of Maplewood. I don't know exactly. Do you need me to call the police? This sounds like elder abandonment. That's a felony in this state. Not yet, I said. I need information first. I need to know what they've done. Can you help me? Yes, he said. I'll start first thing tomorrow. Mrs. Lawson, Kristen, are you safe where you are? I looked around at the dark woods, the distant shack, the cold stars above. I will be, I said. I hung up. For a long moment I stood there on that hilltop, the phone still in my hand. Then I walked back down to the shack, and for the first time since I'd arrived, I smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who'd just found a weapon. Claire thought she'd buried me, but she'd only planted me, and now I was going to grow into something she couldn't control. I didn't sleep that first night. I sat on the floor of the shack, my back against the wall, wrapped in my thin coat, and I watched the darkness. Not because I was afraid. Fear had burned away somewhere on that hilltop, replaced by something colder and more useful. I watched because I was planning every creak of the wood, every rustle outside. Every sound was information, teaching me about this place that was, now, temporarily, My prison. Temporarily. That was the key word. By the time pale light began seeping through the cracks in the boarded windows, I had made a list in my head. Not of what I'd lost, but of what I had. What I had, a shack with a roof. A well somewhere nearby. I'd seen the stone circle behind the building. My suitcase with basic supplies. My phone with 2 bars of signal on the hilltop. And most importantly, Theodore Blackwell, already working. What they didn't know I had. Legal ownership of my house. A secret savings account from Aunt Marjorie's inheritance 5 years ago. And 40 years of teaching teenagers, which meant I knew how to be patient, strategic, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. The sun rose slowly, turning the world from black to gray to pale gold. I stood, my body stiff and aching, and walked outside. The morning air was cold and sharp, smelling of pine and damp earth. Mist hung between the trees like ghosts. It was beautiful in a savage, indifferent way. I walked around the shack, taking inventory. The well was there, just as I'd glimpsed, an old stone structure with a wooden cover half rotted through. I lifted it carefully. The interior was dark, but when I dropped a pebble, I heard a splash seconds later. Water. I had water. Behind the shack, I found the remnants of a garden, overgrown with weeds, but underneath I could see the bones of raised beds. Someone had lived here once. Someone had tried to make a life. And if they could, so could I. I returned to the shack and opened my suitcase properly for the first time. The clothes Claire had packed were old, worn, things I'd relegated to the back of my closet. A faded sweatshirt, jeans with holes in the knees, my oldest sneakers. She'd packed me like I was going to a landfill. At the bottom, under the clothes, I found something that made me stop. A photograph. It was small, bent at the corners. Michael and me on our wedding day. I was 22. He was 25. We were standing on the courthouse steps, laughing at something. I couldn't remember what anymore. I stared at it. Claire must have packed it by accident. Or maybe, a small, painful part of me wondered, maybe she'd included it on purpose. One last mercy before she erased me. I tucked it into my pocket. "I'm still here, Michael," I whispered. "And I'm fighting." The first 3 days were survival. I found an old metal bucket in the shed behind the shack, rusted but serviceable. I hauled water from the well, trip after trip, until my arms burned. I scrubbed one room clean, just one. The main room with the stove. I swept away years of dirt and leaves and mouse droppings until the wooden floor showed through. In the shed I found tools, a saw, a hammer, nails, and wood. Old planks from some long-ago project. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never built anything in my life. But I had time, and I had rage, and those 2 things turned out to be excellent teachers. I reinforced the porch steps, badly, crudely, but they held my weight. I unboarded one window, just one, to let light in. The glass was cracked but intact. I found matches in a rusted tin and managed to start a fire in the stove. It smoked terribly at first, billowing black clouds that made me cough until my throat was raw. But eventually, the chimney warmed and the draft cleared. The first time I felt heat from that stove, I cried. Just for a moment. Just a few tears that I wiped away quickly, angrily. I wasn't sad. I was grateful. Grateful that I could still do this. Still make warmth from nothing. Every evening I climbed the hill to check my phone. Nothing from Theodore yet, but I didn't expect instant results. Legal work took time. On the 3rd evening, I called him. "Mrs. Lawson," he answered immediately. "I was just about to call you." My heart quickened. "You found something. Several things. None of them good." He paused. "Are you somewhere you can talk?" I looked around at the empty woods, the darkening sky. "I'm alone. Tell me." "First, your daughter has been redirecting your pension deposits into a joint account, as you knew. But what you didn't know is that she's also taken out a line of credit against your house. $75,000? The number hit me like a fist. How?" My voice was barely a whisper. "I never signed anything. That's the interesting part. The documents were signed last November, notarized. Your signature is on them. November. I'd been sick in November. A terrible flu that left me bedridden for 2 weeks. Claire had been there bringing me soup, managing my medications, putting papers in front of me. Tax forms, I said slowly. She told me they were tax forms. They weren't tax forms, Mrs. Lawson. They were loan documents. Fraud. She'd committed fraud while I was too weak to read what I was signing. "Can we fight it?" I asked. "Yes, it'll take time, but yes." I've already filed a motion to freeze the line of credit and initiated a fraud investigation. The bank is cooperating. They don't like being part of elder abuse cases. Makes them look bad. What about the house itself? Can they take it? Not while this is under investigation. And Mrs. Lawson, here's the best part. Because the house is solely in your name, and because Claire is not listed as a co-owner or beneficiary, she has no legal claim to it whatsoever. Even if you died tomorrow, without a will specifically naming her, the property would go through probate. She'd have to fight for it. A will. I'd never written one. After Michael died, I'd meant to, but I'd never gotten around to it. Draft me a will, I said. Tomorrow. Leave everything to charity. Not 1 cent to Claire. Mrs. Lawson. Not 1 cent, Theodore. I mean it. I'll have it ready by tomorrow afternoon. You can sign it when you're back in town. I'm not coming back to town. Not yet. Bring it here. Here? Mrs. Lawson, I don't even know where here is. I gave him directions as best I could. The highway exit. The turnoff. The dirt road. Look for the only shack that looks like it's about to fall over. That's me. He was silent for a moment. This is really where she left you. This is where she tried to bury me, I corrected. There's a difference. I'll be there tomorrow. 2 o'clock. After I hung up, I sat on the hilltop for a long time, watching the stars come out. $75,000. She'd stolen $75,000 from me while I was sick. And then she'd thrown me away like garbage. The anger I felt wasn't hot. It was ice cold, surgical. I wasn't just going to win. I was going to destroy them. The next morning, I was hauling water when I heard footsteps. I froze, the bucket handle digging into my palm. A voice called out, low and cautious. Hello, anybody home? I turned slowly. A man stood at the edge of the clearing. Tall, maybe 70, with silver hair and a face weathered by decades of sun. He wore work clothes, flannel shirt, canvas pants, boots caked with mud. He held up both hands in a gesture of peace. Didn't mean to startle you. Name's Owen Fletcher. I live about a mile down the road. I set the bucket down but didn't move closer. Kristen Lawson. He nodded, as if confirming something he already knew. Saw a car drop you off a few days ago. Young couple. They didn't stay long. No, I said. They didn't. His eyes, clear, pale blue, studied me. Not with pity, with assessment. You planning to stay? He asked. For now. You know this place has been empty for 12 years? Since old Mrs. Garvey passed? I didn't know that. Well, it has, and it's not in great shape. He glanced at the shack. But I see you've been working on it. I didn't respond. He shifted his weight, then said carefully, I'm a retired county judge. 30 years on the bench, and in those 30 years I saw a lot of things, including what you're going through, and what am I going through. My voice was sharp. Elder abandonment. Maybe financial exploitation. Maybe worse, he paused. I'm not here to pry. But I am here to tell you, if you need help, ask. I've got tools. I've got food. And I've got 50 years of knowing how to fight back when someone tries to bury you. We looked at each other for a long moment. Finally, I said, I could use help fixing the stove. It smokes, he smiled. Stove's easy. Let me grab my tools. Be back in 20 minutes. He was back in 15, carrying a toolbox and a canvas bag. Brought some basics, he said, setting the bag down. Bread, cheese, canned soup. Figured you might not have had a decent meal in days. He was right. I'd been eating the 1 box of crackers Claire had packed. Thank you, I said, and meant it. He worked on the stove for an hour, saying little. I watched, learning. Chimney was blocked, he finally announced. Bird's nest from years back. Should draw properly now. We tested it. The smoke rose straight and clean. There, he said with satisfaction. Now you've got heat. He turned to leave, then paused. Mrs. Lawson, Kristen, can I ask you something? Go ahead. You planning to go back? To your old life? I thought about my house. About Claire sleeping in my bed. About the lie of the birthday picnic. There's nothing to go back to, I said. But I'm not staying here forever either. What are you doing then? I met his eyes. I'm rebuilding. And then I'm taking back what's mine. He smiled. Not a pitying smile, a respect smile. Good, he said. Let me know if you need any help with that. After he left, I sat on the porch and ate real food for the first time in days. The bread was fresh. The cheese was sharp, and for the first time since my birthday, I felt something close to hope. Theodore arrived at exactly 2 o'clock the next afternoon, driving a dusty SUV that looked utterly out of place in the wilderness. He climbed out. briefcase in hand, and stared at the shack. "My God," he said softly. "She really did just leave you here?" "She did." He walked over, shook my hand formally. "How are you holding up?" "Better than she expected." He smiled slightly. "I believe it. I brought the will, and some other documents you'll want to see." We sat on the porch, the reinforced porch that now held weight, and he spread papers across the rough wood. "This is your new will," he said, pointing. "Simple and ironclad. Everything goes to the Maplewood Public Library in Michael's name. Nothing to Claire." I signed it. "And this," he continued, "is the fraud complaint I'm filing against Claire and Ryan Brennan. Criminal charges, forgery, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The DA is very interested." "How interested?" "Interested enough to freeze their accounts pending investigation. As of this morning, they can't touch the line of credit. They can't access your pension. And they're about to get a very unpleasant visit from a detective." I felt a savage satisfaction. "There's one more thing," Theodore said quietly. "I went to your house yesterday to retrieve some personal documents, your birth certificate, insurance papers, things you'll need. The door was locked, but I have the legal right as your attorney to access the property. So I went in, and it's already half emptied, Kristen. Your furniture is mostly gone. Your photo albums, your books. They're packing you up like you're already dead." The words should have hurt. But I felt nothing. Just that cold, clear fury. "Let them," I said. "They're making it easier to prove what they did." I took photos. Documented everything. "It'll help in court." "Good." He packed up his briefcase, then hesitated. "Kristen, you don't have to stay here. I can find you a hotel, a shelter, somewhere safe." "I am safe," I said. "I have a neighbor. I have water. I have a plan. And I have something they don't." "What's that?" "Nothing left to lose." He drove away an hour later, and I climbed my hill to check my phone. 3 missed calls. All from Claire. I stared at her name on the screen, then I pressed call back. She answered on the first ring. "Mom." Her voice was high, frantic. "Finally. I've been trying to reach you for days." "I've been busy," I said calmly. "Busy?" "Mom, what did you do?" "The bank froze our accounts. The police called. They're accusing us of—" Her voice broke. "This is insane. You're making a huge mistake, am I?" "Yes, we were trying to help you. And now you're destroying us." "Claire," I said softly, "do you remember my birthday?" Silence. "Do you remember driving me into the woods? Dropping me at a shack? Telling me I'd be fine? Mom, you needed space. I needed my daughter. And you threw me away like garbage. That's not— We were trying to— You committed fraud, Claire. You stole from me. You forged my signature. And now you're going to face the consequences. Mom, please." She was crying now. "We'll fix this. We'll bring you home. Just call off the lawyer, please." "Home?" I laughed, a sound without humor. "Claire, I don't have a home anymore." "You made sure of that." "That's not true. The house is mine. Not yours, mine. And it's going to stay that way." "Mom, goodbye, Claire." I hung up. She called back immediately. I declined. She called again. Declined. On the 4th call, I turned off the phone. Then I sat on that hilltop, watching the sun set through the trees, and I felt a strange peace. They'd tried to erase me, to make me disappear, but I was still here. And now they knew it. The days began to blur together, but not in a bad way. Each one had a rhythm, a purpose. I woke with the sun, hauled water, worked on the shack, patching, cleaning, making it more livable. Owen stopped by every few days, always with something useful. A Coleman stove, a bag of rice, a sleeping bag that was worn but warm. "Found it in my garage," he'd say, as if these gifts were nothing. But they were everything. We didn't talk much. Owen wasn't a talker, but his presence was solid, reassuring. He taught me how to split firewood, how to set a snare for rabbits, how to identify which wild plants were edible. "You're a quick learner," he observed one afternoon. "I'm motivated," I replied. He smiled. "That you are." One evening, he brought a box of old books. "Thought you might be bored." I opened it. Inside were classics, Dickens, Austen, Thoreau, and on top a slim volume with a worn cover, Walden by Henry David Thoreau. I picked it up, ran my fingers over the cover. "Seemed appropriate," Owen said. "Man goes into the woods to live deliberately. Figure that's what you're doing." I met his eyes. "Thank you." After he left, I sat by the stove and read by candlelight. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach. I closed the book and looked around at my tiny, rough kingdom. This wasn't Walden Pond. This was exile, abandonment, but it was also, somehow, freedom. For the first time in 5 years, maybe longer, I wasn't living for someone else. I wasn't shrinking. I wasn't performing. I was just existing, rebuilding, preparing, and it felt like coming back to life. 2 weeks after my birthday, Theodore called. "We've got a court date," he said without preamble. 3 weeks from now. Preliminary hearing on the fraud charges. The DA wants you there to testify. I'll be there. There's more. The investigation into the line of credit is moving fast. The bank's handwriting expert says your signature was traced. It's textbook forgery. Can they prove it? They already have. Claire's going to be arrested, Kristen. Probably within the week. I closed my eyes. Felt nothing. No satisfaction. No sadness. Just inevitability. What about Ryan? He's claiming ignorance. Says he didn't know about the forged documents. But he's not off the hook. He benefited from the fraud, which makes him complicit. Will they go to jail? Possibly. Fraud involving elderly victims carries serious penalties. They're looking at felony charges. If convicted, yes. Jail time is likely. I thought about Claire, about the little girl who used to climb into my lap and ask me to read her stories, about the woman who'd driven me into the woods and left me to die. They weren't the same person. Maybe they never had been. Kristen. Theodore's voice pulled me back. Are you all right? I'm fine. What do I need to do? Come back to town. We'll prep you for testimony. And Kristen, you'll need somewhere to stay. You can't go back to the house yet. Not until this is resolved. I have somewhere, I said, looking around at my shack. Right here. That's not... Kristen, you can't live in a condemned building. I've been living here for 2 weeks. I'm managing. But, Theodore, I interrupted gently, I'm not coming back yet. Not until I'm ready. Send me the paperwork. I'll review it, and I'll be there for the hearing. But until then, this is where I need to be. He sighed. You're the most stubborn client I've ever had. Good. That means I'll win. After we hung up, I sat on the porch and watched the light fade. 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, I'd face them. But I wouldn't go back as the woman they'd discarded. I'd go back as someone new. Someone they'd created without meaning to. Someone who wouldn't bend, wouldn't break. Someone who'd clawed her way back from the grave they'd dug. That night I built the fire hot and bright. I cooked rice and canned vegetables on Owen's camping stove. I ate slowly, savoring every bite. Then I pulled out the photograph of Michael and me on our wedding day. We looked so young, so sure that love and effort would be enough. You tried to protect me, I whispered to his image. You put the house in my name. You knew, didn't you? You knew I'd need it. The photograph didn't answer. But I felt something, not Michael's ghost, but his love. His faith in me. I won't let you down, I promised. I'm going to finish this, for both of us. I tucked the photo back in my pocket, close to my heart. Outside, an owl called in the darkness, and I smiled. They'd thrown me into the wilderness to make me disappear. Instead, they'd freed me. And now I was coming back, not as their victim, as their reckoning. 3 weeks passed like water over stone, slow, steady, reshaping everything. I didn't count the days. I measured them in work, in small victories. The shack had a new front step. The well had a proper cover. The stove drew clean and hot. I'd even managed to patch the worst holes in the roof with tarps Owen brought me. Every morning, I woke stronger. My hands, soft from years of easy living, had grown calloused and capable. My body, weakened by 5 years of grief and compliance, had hardened. But the biggest change wasn't physical. It was the woman I saw when I caught my reflection in the cracked window glass. She didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. She looked back at me with clear, steady eyes, and I realized with a start that I recognized her. She was the woman I'd been at 22. Before motherhood softened me, before widowhood hollowed me out, before Claire taught me that love meant disappearing. That woman had been waiting, and now she was back. The morning of the hearing, Owen drove me to town in his pickup truck. I'd refused Theodore's offer to send a car. I wanted to arrive on my own terms, with someone who didn't pity me. I wore the only decent clothes I had left, a simple gray dress I'd found folded at the bottom of my suitcase, and a cardigan Owen's late wife had left behind. My hair, now longer and shot through with more silver, was pulled back simply. I looked like what I was, A woman who'd survived something she shouldn't have had to survive. "You nervous?" Owen asked as we drove through the awakening countryside. "No," I said. "And I meant it. Good. Don't be. You've got truth on your side. That's a hell of a weapon." We reached Maplewood just after 9. The town looked exactly the same. The coffee shop, the library, the grocery store where I used to shop every Thursday. But I was different. And that made everything different. Theodore met us in the courthouse parking lot. He took one look at me and his expression shifted. Surprise, then something like respect. "Mrs. Lawson," he said. "You look well." "I am well." "Good. Because today's going to be difficult. Claire and Ryan will both be there. So will their attorney. He's going to try to paint you as confused, vindictive, mentally unstable. Let him try." Theodore smiled slightly. "That's the spirit. Come on. We've got 30 minutes before we're called." The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood-paneled walls, rows of benches, fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly ill. I sat beside Theodore at the plaintiff's table and waited. The door opened. Claire walked in first, and I barely recognized her. She'd lost weight. Her face was drawn, shadowed. She wore a conservative navy suit and minimal makeup, her hair pulled back severely. She looked like someone playing the role of a dutiful daughter, but her eyes, when they landed on me, were pure venom. Ryan followed, equally gaunt. He wouldn't meet my gaze at all. They sat with their attorney, a sharp-faced man in an expensive suit who immediately began whispering urgently to them. Claire kept staring at me. I stared back, calm and unblinking, until she looked away. "All rise, Judge." Emma Hendricks entered, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen every lie the world had to offer and wasn't impressed by any of them. "Be seated," she said briskly. "Case number 24 CR 8847. The People versus Claire Brennan and Ryan Brennan. Charges of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, forgery and fraud. Counsel, are you ready?" The DA, a serious young woman named Sarah Miller, stood. "Ready, Your Honor." Claire's attorney stood. "Ready, Your Honor." "Good. Ms. Miller, you may present your opening statement." Sarah stood, walked to the center of the room. "Your Honor, this case is about betrayal. About a daughter and son-in-law who systematically stole from an elderly widow, forged her signature on legal documents, and when she became inconvenient, when she might discover what they'd done, they abandoned her in an uninhabitable structure 2 hours from civilization, hoping she would simply disappear." Claire's attorney shot to his feet. "Objection. Inflammatory language." "Overruled," Judge Hendricks said flatly. "I'll decide what's inflammatory, Mr. Carver." "Continue, Ms. Miller. The evidence will show that Mrs. Kristen Lawson, age 60, was the victim of a calculated scheme. That her daughter, Claire Brennan, forged her signature on loan documents while Mrs. Lawson was seriously ill. That Mrs. Brennan and her husband diverted Mrs. Lawson's pension, took out a $75,000 line of credit against her home, and when Mrs. Lawson began to realize something was wrong, they removed her from her home under false pretenses and left her in a condemned building with no car, no phone service, and minimal supplies. "Your Honor," Mr. Carver interrupted, "my clients took Mrs. Lawson to a property they believed would be peaceful and beneficial for her mental health." "Mr. Carver," the judge said coldly, "you'll have your turn." "Sit down." He sat. Sarah continued. "We will present bank records showing the unauthorized transfers. Forensic handwriting analysis proving the signature on the loan documents was forged. And testimony from Mrs. Lawson, herself about the events of her 60th birthday, the day her own daughter told her she was being taken to a picnic and, instead, was abandoned in the wilderness. She sat down. Mr. Carver stood, his expression smooth and practiced. "Your Honor, my clients are loving family members who made difficult decisions about an aging parent showing signs of cognitive decline. Mrs. Lawson has been forgetful, confused, and increasingly unable to manage her own affairs. My client stepped in to help, managing her finances, paying her bills, and yes, making the difficult choice to find her a quieter living situation when her behavior became erratic. I felt Theodore tense beside me, but I remained still. Let him talk. Let him build his house of lies. The truth would burn it down. The so-called forgery was nothing of the sort. Mrs. Lawson signed those documents willingly, though she may not remember doing so now. The loan was taken out to cover expenses related to her care. And the relocation was done with her best interests at heart. Her best interests? Judge Hendricks interrupted. You're arguing that abandoning a 60-year-old woman in a shack with no utilities is in her best interests? Your Honor, the property was intended as a temporary retreat. A retreat with no running water. No electricity? No means of communication or transportation? Mr. Carver's smooth expression cracked slightly. My clients were planning to check on her regularly. But they didn't, did they? In fact, according to the police report, they didn't visit once. Not until they were contacted by authorities. Your Honor, I object to this line of questioning. Save your objections, Mr. Carver. I've read the preliminary reports. I know what your clients did. The only question is whether the evidence proves it beyond a reasonable doubt. Proceed, Ms. Miller. Call your first witness. The people call Kristen Lawson. I stood. Theodore squeezed my arm briefly. A silent message of support. I walked to the witness stand. Was sworn in and sat. Sarah approached with a kind but professional expression. Mrs. Lawson, can you tell the court about your relationship with your daughter, Claire? I looked at Claire. She was staring at the table, her jaw tight. I raised her alone after my husband Michael died 5 years ago, I said. We were close. Or I thought we were. When did that change? Gradually. After Michael's death, Claire began managing more of my affairs. My bills, my accounts. She said it was to help me. That I was grieving and needed support. And did you need that support? I was grieving, but I wasn't incompetent. I was a high school English teacher for 35 years. I managed complex lesson plans, hundreds of students, parent conferences. I was perfectly capable of paying my own bills. But you let Claire take over anyway. Why? I paused, choosing my words carefully. Because I thought that's what good mothers did. They let their children help. They didn't burden them with refusals. When did you first realize something was wrong? Last November. I was very sick. Influenza that became bronchitis. I was bedridden for 2 weeks. Claire was there every day, which I was grateful for. She brought me medicine, soup, papers to sign. Papers? She said they were tax forms. Insurance renewals. I was feverish, barely conscious. I signed them without reading. And what were those papers actually? Loan documents. Claire had forged my signature on a $75,000 line of credit, using my house as collateral. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. How did you discover this? I didn't. Not until after my birthday. Tell us about your birthday, Mrs. Lawson. I took a breath. This was the part that still had teeth. On the morning of my 60th birthday, Claire called. She said she and Ryan had a surprise for me. They were taking me to the lake for a picnic, like we used to do when she was little. How did that make you feel? Happy, I said simply. It had been years since we'd done anything like that. I thought, my voice caught. I steadied it. I thought it meant she still loved me. What happened next? They picked me up at 10. We drove for 2 hours. I kept asking where we were going. Claire said it was a surprise. When we finally stopped, we were in the middle of the woods. There was no lake, just a shack, barely standing, no utilities, no neighbors for miles. What did Claire say? Ryan pulled my suitcase from the trunk. I didn't even know they'd packed it. And Claire said, "This is your new home." The courtroom was absolutely silent. What did you do? I asked if it was a joke. She said it wasn't. She said I needed peace and quiet, that I was becoming a burden, that they needed space. I looked directly at Claire. Then they got in the car and left. They left you there? With no car? No phone service? No way to get help? Yes. Mrs. Lawson, were you afraid? I considered the question. No. I was too shocked to be afraid. The fear came later, but so did something else. What? Clarity. I realized that the woman who raised Claire, the woman who taught her right from wrong, that woman was gone. And if I wanted to survive, I had to become someone new. Sarah nodded. No further questions, Your Honor. Mr. Carver stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Lawson, he began smoothly. You stated you've been forgetful, confused. Would you say your memory is reliable? My memory is fine. Really? Because you just testified that you signed documents without reading them. That sounds like someone who's not fully aware of what they're doing. I was delirious with fever. There's a difference between temporary illness and permanent decline. Are you sure? Because my clients tell me you've been exhibiting signs of dementia, repeating yourself, forgetting conversations. Your clients are lying, I said flatly. That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof? I have proof they forged my signature. I have proof they stole my money. I have proof they abandoned me. What proof do they have that I'm incompetent?" He paused, thrown by my directness. "Mrs. Lawson, isn't it true that you've been living in substandard conditions for the past 3 weeks? In a shack with no electricity? No running water? That's where your clients left me. But you stayed." A rational person would have sought help immediately. I did seek help. I called my attorney. I filed complaints. I fought back. That's what rational people do when they're betrayed. Or it's what vindictive people do when they don't get their way. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Mr. Carver, if you had been dumped in the woods by your own child, told your home was being stolen, and discovered your life savings were being drained, would you consider fighting back vindictive? Or would you consider it survival?" He had no answer. "No further questions," he muttered. I returned to my seat. Theodore leaned over. "You were perfect." The rest of the hearing moved quickly. Theodore called the bank's handwriting expert, who testified that my signature had been traced. Not forged from memory, traced. Which meant Claire had access to documents with my real signature and deliberately copied it. He called Mr. Patterson from the bank, who confirmed that all deposits and withdrawals matched Sarah's timeline. He called Owen Fletcher, who testified about finding me abandoned, about the condition of the shack, about my determination to survive. And then Sarah played her final card. "Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence a recording of a phone conversation between Mrs. Lawson and her daughter, made 1 week after the abandonment." "Objection!" Mr. Carver leapt up. "This recording was made without my client's consent. Washington is a one-party consent state," Sarah said calmly. "Mrs. Lawson was a party to the conversation. The recording is legal," Judge Hendricks nodded. "I'll allow it. Play the recording." The courtroom filled with the sound of Claire's voice. High, panicked, desperate. "Mom, what did you do?" "The bank froze our accounts. The police called. You're destroying us." Then my voice, cold and steady. "Do you remember my birthday, Claire? Do you remember driving me into the woods? Dropping me at a shack? You needed space. I needed my daughter. And you threw me away like garbage." The recording ended. Claire was crying silently, her face in her hands. Ryan stared at the floor. Judge Hendricks removed her glasses, cleaned them, put them back on. "I've heard enough," she said. "This court finds probable cause to proceed with criminal charges against Claire Brennan and Ryan Brennan. The defendants will surrender their passports and remain in the jurisdiction pending trial. Bail is set at $50,000 each. This court is adjourned." The gavel came down. It was over. In the hallway outside, Theodore gripped my shoulder. "You won, Kristen. They're going to trial. And they're going to lose." "I know," I said. Claire and Ryan were led past us by their attorney. Claire stopped, turned to me. Her eyes were red, her face streaked with tears. "Mom," she whispered. "Mom, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please don't do this." I looked at her. "This woman who used to be my daughter. You made your choices, Claire. Now live with them." "Mom." "Goodbye, Claire." I walked away. Didn't look back. Owen was waiting by his truck. "How'd it go?" he asked. "We won." He smiled. Never doubted it. The trial happened 6 weeks later. I didn't attend. Theodore said it wasn't necessary. The verdict came back in 2 days. Guilty on all counts. Claire was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Ryan got 2. The $75,000 line of credit was voided. My house was mine, free and clear, and I made a decision. I sold it, not to Claire, not to Ryan, to a nice young couple with a baby on the way. I took the money, $340,000, and split it 3 ways. 1/3 went to the Maplewood Public Library in Michael's name. 1/3 went into a trust for any future grandchildren Claire might have. They'd have access when they turned 25. Not before, and 1/3 I kept. With it, I bought the shack. Bought the 5 acres around it. Hired contractors to make it livable. Real plumbing, real electricity, a new roof, proper insulation. It took 4 months, but when they were done, it wasn't a shack anymore. It was a home. My home, Owen helped me plant a garden. We put in tomatoes, beans, lettuce, herbs. In the evenings, we'd sit on my new porch, sturdy, level, painted white, and watch the sun set through the trees. "You could have gone anywhere," he observed one night. "Back to the city, somewhere easier." "This is where I became myself again," I said. "Why would I leave?" he smiled. "Fair point. 1 year after my birthday, I woke to sunlight streaming through real windows with real glass. I made coffee on a real stove, sat on my real porch with a real mug. The garden was thriving. The woods were alive with birdsong. The air smelled of pine and possibility. My phone rang, a new phone, a smartphone Theodore had insisted I needed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Mom, I'm being released early for good behavior. Can we talk, Claire?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "Not yet. Maybe someday, but not yet." I put the phone down and looked around at everything I'd built. This life, this home, this version of myself that refused to disappear. Claire had tried to bury me. Instead, she'd planted me. And I had grown into something she could never control, never diminish, never take away. I was 61 years old, and I was finally, truly free. 2 years later, on a crisp autumn morning, I received a letter, not a text. A letter, handwritten, postmarked from a town 3 hours away. I recognized the handwriting immediately, Claire's. I almost threw it away, almost burned it in the stove, but something made me open it. "Dear Mom, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. What I did was unforgivable. I've spent 2 years in prison thinking about that day, about the look on your face when Ryan pulled out your suitcase, about driving away and leaving you there. I told myself I was doing the right thing, that you needed help, that we needed space, but the truth is simpler and uglier. I wanted your house. I wanted your money, and I convinced myself you wouldn't really suffer. I was wrong. About everything. Prison taught me what you must have felt that day. What it's like to be powerless, forgotten, treated like you don't matter. I don't know if I'll ever be the daughter you deserved. Probably not. But I want you to know that I see it now. What I did, what I destroyed. I'm not asking you to call me or forgive me. I'm just asking you to know that I'm sorry, truly deeply sorry, and that I hope wherever you are, you're happy. Claire." I folded the letter carefully, placed it in my desk drawer. Then I walked outside into my garden, where the late tomatoes were heavy on their vines. Was I happy? I picked a tomato still warm from the sun and bit into it. The taste was bright, clean, real. Yes, I was happy. Not because I'd forgiven her, not because the past was erased, but because I'd survived it, had rebuilt myself from nothing, had learned that I was stronger than I ever knew. Claire had tried to bury me, but in doing so, she'd freed me. And that, I realized, was its own kind of justice. I finished the tomato, wiped my hands on my jeans, and went back inside. The house, was warm and bright. Owen would be over later for dinner. We were making soup. Life was simple here, quiet, uncomplicated by the weight of other people's expectations. And for the first time in decades, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. If this story moved you, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support helps me continue sharing stories that uncover the hidden truths of everyday life. There are so many more untold stories waiting to be revealed. Thank you for being here. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in their place? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share them with me in the comments below. On the screen, you can see 2 more life stories I strongly recommend. There are many more waiting on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.